Instead of putting this border, this customs border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, we've put it down. We've done something which no country has done in the other than through losing a war, which is to partition itself. It's remarkable. We've got a border down the middle of the United Kingdom because of what the EU said. So that's what I mean about chances of ditching net zero when we can't even manage our sovereign integrity.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen, is it?
For the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by.
Hello, happy Sunday. Today's Sunday sermon or conversation is with Ben Habib, former MEP for London, Brexiteer and avowed white supremacist. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about several things because once you get him going, he starts to go. But first of all, I want to talk to him about the economy, inflation, cost of living crisis, why it's all happening, what's going to happen in the future. Hi, Ben. How are you doing?
Hi, Laurence. Pleasure to be here. Very well. How are you?
I'm all right, actually. It's Friday, so I'm pretty. It's Sunday. Sorry, it's Sunday. I'm happy, but I am concerned that when I filled up my car the other day, diesel was £2 a litre. I am slightly concerned that my Waitrose shop, because I'm posh, is really expensive. What is happening to the economy?
Well, this is a direct result of lockdown. You know, when we went into lockdown, effectively, and it all starts with fuel, effectively reserves of oil and gas were depleted. It wasn't, in fact, sensible to be holding oil and gas because you might remember that the storage of oil went through the roof and oil had a negative value at one point. It may surprise you to know, however, that actually the use of oil only fell by about 10% during lockdowns. So the price of oil is very, very sensitive to the amount of demand in the economy for it. And when we unlocked, what we got was a supply shock, principally initially driven by gas and oil, the absence of it. As demand for it went up by about 10%, there was just an inadequate reserve for it, and they couldn't turn on the taps fast enough. So we had oil prices and gas prices for the first time in many years going right through the roof. And then, of course, oil and gas are used in many manufacturing processes, fertilizers, the production of food, etc. And then you got second round inflation effects coming from that.
What's the second round inflation effect?
Well, so, you know, the cost of all raw materials went up on the back of fossil fuels going up in price. So the production of all other consumables effectively went up.
So if you put the petrol in the lorry to drive the bread to the supermarket, that's a secondary inflation effect.
Exactly, okay. Yeah. And not to be confused with second round effects, which is when wages then go up and then you get another surge of inflation. So keeping the inflation genie in the bottle, as it were, was very important. And as we unlocked, the government had given no thought to it. And so this inflationary spike is not a result of the Ukrainian war. That may be exacerbating it. But this is a direct result of lockdown policies and not having a plan for how to unlock the economy.
Right, exactly. So, and you and I both campaigned pretty heavily for the end of lockdown policies because we could see what was going to happen.
We did. Funny enough, I was looking at a series of articles I wrote in 2020 and 2021, pleading with the Chancellor publicly not to just focus on the effects of the adverse economic effects of lockdown, but what would be required in order to get the economy going once we unlock. And, you know, there were two central themes in the pieces that I wrote then and still hold true. The first bit of it was that he had to cut taxes on what I called the activity of doing business, the activity of trading, so that he could get trading back up again. And so,
corporation tax?
No, corporation tax is a tax on profit.
Right.
So that wasn't my priority, actually. But the taxes he should have cut were VAT, which hits you straight in the pocket when you buy something, tax on fuel, which is obviously where, you know, taxes have gone up so much, tax on the working and middle classes. So national insurance, instead of being pushed up, which is what he did as we came out of lockdown, national insurance should have been cut. And as you and I also discussed during lockdown, all that printing of money effectively robbed the poor of capital because the rich see their asset prices go up when the value of money goes down through printing. But of course, you know, the working and middle classes survive principally on cash in their back pocket. So when you print cash, you devalue their position in society. And so we had to really cut taxes on the working and middle classes as we came out of lockdown. Cut taxes on the activity of doing business. The other big tax which needs to be cut is business rates, so just occupational rates. Again, during lockdown, it was physical businesses that operate in the real world that got hit very hard, and they needed real help as we came out of lockdown, but no help was offered. VAT was not cut. National insurance was put up. We now have an economy, Laurence, where taxes are higher than they've ever been since the immediate post-World War II period. And that's under 12 years of Tory government. Unacceptable.
It's insane. Is there a truth in the fact that inflation actually benefits the government in the fact that it reduces the value of their debt, or not?
It helps the government in two ways. First, it reduces the real value of their debt. And as prices of goods go up, they collect more tax. Because VAT is a tax on the value of goods. So as the price of goods go up, they get more tax. And actually, the government had a record tax take last year.
Really?
They should be cutting taxes.
Why aren't they?
Because they're hamstrung by traditional, unthought through Tory ideology, which is that they've got to balance the books, and they're raising taxes to try and balance the books. But the golden goose, the goose that lays the golden egg, can't lay eggs if you strangle it.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. The private sector is being strangled. And, we are going to be the bottom of the G20 in terms of growth as a country. But bottom with the exception of Russia, because they've got sanctions against them.
I thought Russia was doing all right. I thought the ruble was doing quite well.
Well, the ruble is doing well. Sanctions actually aren't working. That's a different discussion to have. But no, the government's got it really wrong. They should have cut taxes on the activity of doing business. They should have cut taxes on the working and middle classes. And the other thing that they needed to do was get off this ridiculous new, the Green New Revolution and this drive to net zero, which again is a huge burden on the economy.
50 billion a year, is that what we're spending on?
50 billion a year, so 1.4 trillion between now and 2050. It's a massive sum of money. That's not a figure I've made up.
No.
That's a Treasury figure. So why would they be burdening the economy with that massive cost at a time when inflation is through the roof? They should be cutting back their desire to impose net zero on everyone, and they should be using this fantastic natural resource we have in the UK, which is an abundance of gas, either through fracking or just getting North Sea gas reserves being pumped again.
So America has started this sort of ideological drive to going from a net exporter of energy under the dreaded Orange Man bad to shutting down all pretty much domestic gas and oil production. In the same mission to get to this weird Green New Deal net zero thing. What is possibly the benefit of net zero, other than we obviously want a cleaner and more sustainable planet, but net zero to me feels like a totally ideologically driven policy. It has no benefit to your average citizen. So why would a Tory government, who is meant to be encouraging entrepreneurship and the growth of businesses and personal responsibility and low tax, high growth economy, why is the Tory government pushing ahead with this?
Well, we've heard the expression "build back better," haven't we? And everyone said that again. During lockdowns, we often heard it said in Canada by Trudeau, by Biden, by Boris Johnson and others, we've got to build back better. So they're all reading the same script, whatever that script is.
Build back communism, isn't it?
And it is effectively, what I think people lose sight of is that Boris Johnson is a globalist. He's not actually, he doesn't derive validation from the electorate of the British population. He derives his personal validation from the pats on the back he gets at the World Economic Forum, the pats on the backs he gets at the G7. And that's why they all get their validation like that. Trudeau does, Biden does. And it's a sort of little club where they've reinforced their own view of how the world needs to go. And they've reached the conclusion, rightly or wrongly, they've reached the conclusion that unless we hit net zero by 2050, the planet is facing an existential threat. And it's one hell of a conclusion to reach, because the net result of that is that we have to economically emasculate ourselves right now. Yeah. We have to do huge damage. And it's not as if this is a global thing that's been adopted. You know, the Chinese have not adopted it. They're very happy to make the
solar panels.
They're very happy to make solar panels and sell them to us. They're very happy to make windmills and sell them to us, but they're making them in coal-fired power stations. And you know, there's a huge irony here that their economy is being boosted as a result of our self-immolation, if you like. You know, we're slashing our economic wrists in the pursuit of this policy, and it's deeply damaging to the West.
So what do we do? I mean, I've always said that if we've got these trillions of tons of shale gas right beneath our cubic feet, is it, or tons? I don't know what it is, of shale gas.
A lot of gas.
But beneath North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, and various places, and we haven't yet managed to bridge the gap between renewables and fossil-based energy
which we
supply,
haven't.
Which
Absolutely,
we really haven't. Why are we not doing this? Why would that not make sense to bring thousands of jobs back into the UK, create high-tech jobs for people, really good training, and reduce our cost?
I mean, energy self-sufficiency, or at least energy independence, a path to energy sufficiency without being reliant on, you know, Putin. It should be a government priority.
Yeah, it should be a policy. But why is the problem is? I mean, Richard Tyson and Nigel are up for their referendum on net zero, which I think is good. But isn't that constitutionally impossible because of the fact that it's baked into every manifesto of every political party?
It is. It's in our law. It's also, by the way, in the trade and cooperation agreement we signed with the EU. Pages 200 and 201, and
you know it.
and it's the reason I know it is because I keep hearing David Frost saying that we must ditch net zero, with which I agree, but it's David Frost that negotiated that deal and put it into a binding international treaty. So we can't get out of net zero very easily. We would have to be prepared to terminate our arrangements with the EU. It's called a non-regression policy. So we've signed up. Basically what it says, Laurence, and I think it's worth people understanding this.
Yeah.
What that trade and cooperation agreement says is that any laws, domestic laws in the UK, which affect the environment and are in place as at the end of the transition period, which was 31st December 2020, may not be regressed from. The country may not regress from those laws, even if they have future effects, which of course net zero is a future effect because we're aiming for it by 2050. So we are locked into net zero by 2050 because of Lord Frost and Boris Johnson. They don't tell you that. You know, David Frost, when he's banging the drum, as he often does now, saying we've got to ditch net zero, again I reiterate, with which I agree, doesn't tell you that he signed up a blooming agreement which prevents us from doing it.
Is there any way we can get out of these situations, the regression ones?
Well, it's very, very tough because we've signed up to it. And you can see the government is so timid, it's not prepared to protect the integrity of the United Kingdom when it comes to challenging the EU. So to challenge the EU on net zero as part of the agreement, I mean, I think it's beyond Boris Johnson and his cabinet.
It's so worrying that you know, all I really want out in life is I want the Conservatives to be Conservative and Labour to be Labour. That's it. That's all I want. And the Lib Dems to occasionally lob in some odd policies about whatever they want to do. But we just seem to have Communist Party A and Communist Party B driving everybody into a higher sort of feudal strata of kings and
But we're
noblemen
not being... I think that at the core of the problem, if I was to encapsulate it in one phrase, is we're not being governed in the national interest. We're being governed in some global, morally correct, ostensibly morally correct narrative that has infected seemingly only the developed economies. You know, it's only the developed economies that are doing this.
Well, they all fly into COP26 and do global deals.
I know.
And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm a voter. Do I not get to say?
I know, exactly. And Prince Charles, who uses private jets and private helicopters all the time, takes cash from Qataris, you know, takes money from Qataris in cash. You know, every time he gets up, he talks about net zero.
I wonder what the Venn diagram of private jet owners and people that want to go for net zero are.
Qataris get their money from fossil fuel, by the way, just in case the connection hasn't been. Maybe that's why he wanted it in cash.
Exactly.
You know.
And he's going to be our monarch soon.
I know.
You're a big fan of the monarchy, aren't you?
I'm a big fan in principle of the monarchy. I've got real question marks over Prince Charles.
Me too.
And
he's a Build Back Better.
Yeah. And he is big Build Back Better. So he's been captured by this sort of global view of governance. And I think he's going to do damage to the monarchy.
Farage said to me when I was with him a few weeks ago, he said to me, the monarchy, we've just been very lucky because we've had the Queen and she's just been so brilliant, but you do go through terrible stages of the monarchy. So projecting ourselves forward towards the next general election, there doesn't seem to be much appetite for these littler, smaller parties. Richard was telling me the other day when he was knocking on the doors in Wakefield, they were going, well, if I vote for you, it's a wasted vote because we're not, and I don't want to, by accident, get somebody else in. So my view is that one of the ways you can affect the political landscape in the country is by challenging the law. So you go, right, can you clarify the law so people can understand where they can grab hold of the levers of power?
But bad law project.
Yeah, which is bad law project. What do you, if I made you, I know what you do, I made you Chancellor tomorrow, but what would you do if you were Prime Minister tomorrow?
Well, if I were Prime Minister, obviously there's a huge economic stuff that we've just talked about that I would do. But also I would be increasing defence spending. I would be increasing expenditure on infrastructure because I think the country badly needs proper broadband across it. It badly needs connectivity in the north. I would scrap HS2. Maybe too late to scrap.
Wasn't
HS2.
that an EU thing anyway? HS2, the whole thing that it was meant to connect all of the European cities, and then once we left the EU, it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, well, I mean, all it seems to be doing is connecting Birmingham to London.
10 minutes quicker.
10 minutes quicker. We had a perfectly good connection with Birmingham anyway.
Yeah.
I would be taking a very proactive approach to growth for the economy, and I would be ditching all policies that hold back growth. I would be making Northern Ireland, for example, entirely a free port. And
okay, wait. Let's go into this Northern Ireland, right? Because for those of us that are as thick as me, I still struggle to understand the Northern Ireland Protocol. Let me tell you what I know about Northern Ireland Protocol, and then you can tell me.
Yeah.
There's essentially, they want the EU are threatening to have a hard border between the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland because anything that's manufactured in the UK that may end up in the south of Ireland without a hard border needs to go through some sort of check. Is that the correct thing?
Yeah, so the EU is saying that unless you do something internally in the United Kingdom, we're going to have a hard border in the island of Ireland to protect our single market, and that would breach the Good Friday Agreement. I mean, why we should fuss about what the EU wants?
Why do we?
It's absolutely beyond me. We said repeatedly, to be fair to people like Rees-Mogg, they said repeatedly in the run-up to signing the deal in 2019
WTO.
That we would never institute a hard border on the British side of the border. We would never have custom. By the way, this whole hard border, I hate referring to it as hard border. What is a hard border? Conjures up images of military installations. There was never any notion of a military installation being constructed on either side of the border. Customs checks. If the IRA are going to get apoplectic because they've got to show someone a customs declaration, well, they're lunatics, aren't they? The idea that violence may return because you've got to produce a customs declaration is just absurd. But
why are the Americans involved? Why do the Americans always pop up, the Democrats?
Because there's such a strong Irish influence in the US, and they backed the IRA. Let's not make any bones about this. The Americans were behind the IRA.
Thanks, YouTube, for taking us down for that one.
But they did.
I know.
They did, yeah, they did. And, even Biden, when he's asked about his leanings, his Anglosphere leanings, he doesn't say he's pro-British. He says he's pro-Irish. We're meant to have this special relationship with the USA. And they should get their nose out of our sovereign matters. It's got nothing to do with them. The Good Friday Agreement is a treaty between the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Yeah. Not Great Britain, the United Kingdom. Yeah. It's our matter. So instead of putting this customs border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, we've put it down. We've done something which no country has done in the other than through losing a war, which is to partition itself. It's remarkable. We've got a border down the middle of the United Kingdom because of what the EU said. So that's what I mean about chances of ditching net zero when we can't even manage our sovereign integrity.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen, is it?
Well, okay, so what's going to happen in by 2028, as long as Keir Starmer doesn't resign and we don't get a snap general election soon, what is this country going to look like?
It's not looking good. We're on a really bad path. Part of the reason for Brexit was so that we could deregulate, so that we could cut the apron strings of this ever increasingly bureaucratic, inexorably designed to fail institution that is the EU. And we haven't done that. We've continued to be hitched at the waist to them. We are in what Boris Johnson himself said he would never do, which is a lunar orbit around their regulatory network. That's what we're in. And I think the trajectory for the United Kingdom is awful. I said in 2019 that the deal that he was proposing to sign with the EU was worse than remaining. And I say it again, it's worse than remaining. We now have an existential threat to the integrity of the United Kingdom. Our economy is in deep trouble because he can't deregulate. He isn't deregulating. It's in deep trouble because he won't cut taxes. It's in deep trouble because we have a government that is obsessed by taxing, borrowing and spending. So we have the Labour Party that wants to do that, and we got a Tory party that's doing it.
Yeah.
And
what's the political solution then? If you've got two parties doing exactly the same thing, then the globalists have won anyway, haven't they? They're giving you the mirage of standard traditional government, but actually it is just Communist Party A or Communist Party
we
B.
don't have a libertarian, deregulating, small state, low taxation ideological party other than Richard's and yours.
Yeah.
You know,
But
and
why
I'm
won't
afraid,
people-
with the greatest respect, you two aren't going to win an election.
Are you telling me that? I'm not. This has come as a real shock. Well, but what would it take for people to go right? You know, so say my dad has always said to me, he goes, people will hit the streets when they can't afford to eat. He said that's what'll happen. So if people can't afford to eat, which will happen, as far as I can gather, then something will have to happen. Will the Tories have to then revert to Plan Ben, where they go, you know?
Now they're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, it's like a snowball.
So there was a time in 2020 when the magic tree was open, the magic money tree was open, and they could just print money. That tree, that magic money tree, is not harvestable at the moment.
The forest is gone.
The forest is gone. We've got high inflation. You could have done that then. And I actually wrote to someone in Number 10, who I believe passed it on to the Prime Minister, back in 2020, saying that the magic money tree is now open. What you should be doing is raising a lot more money than you need. Not to spend it, but so that you can cut taxes when we come out of this, so you can boost growth. It's all about growth. It's all about growing your economy. And I'm going to give a stat which is absolutely horrific. In 2010, when the Tories came to power, the gross domestic product of the United Kingdom was £2 trillion annually. The gross domestic product now is 2.2 trillion. It's gone up 10% in 12 years. Meantime, inflation before the current spike had gone up 25%.
So that's a real-time loss of 15%.
15%. Our economy in real terms has shrunk by 15%. The US, by the way, has grown by 50% in the same period. And it's been subject to all the same global impacts that we have.
They did have 4 years of the Don, though. And the Don was low regulation, low
It is,
everything,
and
wasn't it?
even the Democrats in the US, however much we might abhor them, even they are further to the libertarian, more right-wing side than our Tory party. You know, they're hardwired for growth, the US.
Well, it's in their mentality, isn't it? Optimism, hope, all of this stuff. So for me, as a sort of I wasn't massively engaged with Brexit, but my idea behind Brexit was we're going to be Britain again. We've got a rich cultural heritage, which we're now banning in schools. They're banning Wilfred Owen, who was anti-war.
I know.
You're banning these poets. It's like, we've
I
got
couldn't
to
believe that.
get these institutions. So that's why I think the bad law thing is a good idea, because if you find seminal cases over certain institutions and you can attack them. When you do, by the way, whenever we write pre-action letters to them and we say we're going to take you to all the way, the look of surprise on their face is like, you can't tell us what to do. And I'm like, yes, you're thoroughly accountable to the people. So do you think that's going to be an effective tool if we use it well?
Yeah, I think it's critical you do it. And it's vital. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but if you look at all the policies that are
No
taking
one
place,
sounds like more of a conspiracy theorist. Than me.
but if you look at what they're doing, literally through the Northern Ireland Protocol, they've damaged the integrity of the country. Literally by challenging our history, all the people we grew up to hold as heroes and diminishing them and dragging them through the mud, they're damaging our sense of self-belief. Literally by this net zero drive, keeping regulations up, taxes up, they're emasculating the economy. It's as if they want the United Kingdom to fail. It's as if there's a power out there that just wants to rip us apart, and we're on this inexorable path towards failure. I had dinner the other night. I said this on Talk TV. Am I allowed to mention Talk TV the other day? I had dinner with a couple of friends, one of whom was at Cambridge, one of whom went to Oxford, both of them from ethnic minorities like myself.
You're a white supremacist. You are.
I have strong Pakistani blood flowing through my veins and strong English blood flowing through my... But both of them said, we had this debate about, illegal migrants coming across the North Sea, and they were both of the view, educated people my age, both of the view that we should not be protecting our borders because of our imperial past, that we have forfeit the right to protect the integrity of the United Kingdom. Now, these are bright, educated, I thought sensible people. And that's what the view was. And
it's wealth that's guilt. To me, it's like if people have succeeded, you tend to see that it's the wealthiest, most prosperous economies on earth that seem to adopt this self-flagellating self-hatred and try and, as you say, self-immolate themselves.
Yeah.
But also this whole idea that communism hasn't been done and socialism hasn't been tried properly. I think the WEF agenda, without sounding like too much of a conspiracy theorist, is if we obliterate capitalism everywhere, there will be no alternative. So you won't be able to, your sort of stakeholder capitalism communist version thing that's coming out of China will just exist across the world.
Well, I mean, in effect, that is what is happening. Being these global narratives about the drive to net zero, not worrying about sovereignty, these basic instincts that I grew up. Well, I thought were instincts, and certainly I grew up with them. Hijacking them is diminishing the national status of, diminishes the national being of the United Kingdom, elevates the global being, and the global being by definition is going to be an undemocratic, bureaucratic machine.
Decisions made by unelected people.
Yeah.
But then 17.4 million people voted not to have that.
I know.
So where are they?
Well, sadly the British queue voluntarily, don't we?
Yeah.
We're not really like the French. The French, up in arms every 5 seconds, they'll go and challenge Macron and burn half of Paris down. We don't do that.
We don't do it, but perhaps we should.
We're politely sitting in a room having a conversation, noting our objections. This is as virulent as our debate gets.
But I want some optimism and I want some hope. So give me some, please.
Yeah, well, we need Boris Johnson to become a Conservative.
Do we need Boris in charge? I mean, the problem is, who do you replace him with? You can't replace him with old grinning Hunt, can you? He's terrible.
I mean, the view I take when I'm asked that question is you do not reward failure by incumbency. So, every Tory I meet says, wait, who would you have? Well, that's a really sad reflection on the Tory party if they can't find another leader in amongst their parliamentary party.
Kemi.
Who?
I like Kemi Badnoch.
Yeah.
I think she's amazing.
Yeah, well, there are lots of people. Esther
Culturally,
McVeigh is a good girl.
gets it.
There are lots of good people.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second. It's just because we can't imagine that someone else could be prime minister because we're devoid of imagination. Yeah. I don't believe for a second there isn't a good candidate in amongst their 350 odd MPs that can, lead their party better than Boris Johnson. And just talking about lockdown, all the things that we've talked about, the damage done to this country came through the laws of lockdown. And it is those laws that the Prime Minister held in contempt when he partied. I couldn't care less if the Prime Minister gets pissed in his free time as much as he likes with whomever he likes. But I do care when he breaks a law that has damaged this country so much and and hurt us really into the long term, but treated that law with contempt himself. I do care about that.
The one that he actually made.
The one he made. He didn't inherit it.
That's
he
the
made
that's
it.
the bit that really.
Yeah.
And isn't it fascinating how people do? Oh, come on, we want to move on now. We've got to move on. It's happened now. It's like no, you've got record NHS waiting lists. The NHS, which was already, let's face it, not in the greatest condition.
Yeah.
We've got the soaring inflation. We've got cost of living crisis. Got all this, and people just want to move on and talk about something else. These need to be. It needs to be. They need to be. He needs to pledge. Somebody needs to pledge. I would back any Conservative party leader candidate who said, we will never lock this country down again, even if we got airborne Ebola.
No, we mustn't ever lock down again. We can see the effects of lockdown now. They're playing out now, and they're going to play out for years and years. We've actually broken Western economies. That's what we've done through lockdown. And you can even argue the Ukrainian war is a result of lockdown. And because the reason for that, it may have just been the trigger point, but the reason that Putin could afford to do it is because oil prices rocketed. He could finance his war, and they only rocketed because there was depletion of reserves and production as a result of lockdown.
And Biden's calling it the inflation, the Putin price hike, and people are buying it.
There may be some now secondary inflation coming from the war, but the war itself came after
the initial inflation.
After the initial inflation,
but it fascinatingly, I think in Texas, somewhere in a small congressional district in Texas, which voted 80% Democrat, has just gone, and it's mainly Hispanic, has just gone Republican totally. So it's quite interesting to see that certainly over in America,
people are waking up.
They're shifting to the fact that this.
Well, Biden is a useless president.
Well, he's not. He's senile, so that doesn't help.
That's not helpful. And Kamala, I thought Kamala was whatever her politics is. I thought she was a bright, erudite individual. But have you listened to her speak?
It's like word salad.
Yeah.
She goes, it's part of the process.
Yeah. She just goes round and round in circles.
Of parts.
Exactly.
We take processes and make it part of the process. And also, she's got the world's most annoying laugh. And I think that whatever you thought about,
so have I, by the way.
Do you? Well, you've got a nice laugh. But whatever you thought about Orange Man Bad, he was funny and he believed in freedom.
Yeah, and he called a lot of things right, Laurence.
Yeah.
He sat in the European Parliament in 2018 and was laughed at by German MEPs when he told them, you're becoming too reliant on Russian fossil fuels.
Yeah.
They laughed at him. And he was right about China. He challenged China, and now we're all seeing a slightly aggressive China, aren't we?
We really are.
They're flying past Japan in formation with Russian jets.
Oh, my Lord.
That's not good.
It's not good. So no hope then. Thanks. But this thing of I just wanted this post-Brexit Britain to go, right, let's export this wonderful stuff around the world. Yes, we may be small, but intellectually, emotionally, culturally, all that stuff, we're huge. We're massively diverse.
Yeah.
We in a real way.
Yeah.
And we've got so much to offer the world. And I spoke to John Anderson, the Australian former parliamentarian, and he said the eyes of the world will fall on Britain as this gets worse. He says because as America gets weak, he says, I know, I think it's. Yeah,
if the world's taking its leadership from us, it's a problem.
I don't know. I don't quite like us.
I know, but we got Boris Johnson right at the top.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think Boris is. I'm not Boris's biggest fan, and I'll never forgive him for the lockdown because of my mum's funeral after Maine sort of things. But John was saying to me, he said, as China grows in power and becomes more and more arrogant, Australia is going to start to become more and more frightened, and may lean towards China. America is weaker. All of the free democratic liberal democracies in the world will look towards us for our cultural heritage as to what we believe, that sort of British fighting spirit. And I think it probably will manifest itself in some way. I just don't know how to do it. But then again, I am a beginner.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we're best when we're absolutely taken down. But, the process of becoming our best is going to be a painful one because clearly we're not going to stand up until we are really taken down. Yeah. As your father said, people are going to have to starve on the street, and that is not a good place to take the country. We should, our politicians need to start leading, and they need to put the national interest first, and they need to recognise it's the working and middle classes that actually drive the economy, and they need to be rewarded. They were effectively defrauded in the first round of money printing in 2008, 2009. The pound in their back pocket was devalued while asset prices went through the roof, and the bankers who caused the credit crunch were rewarded. That was a capitalist fraud, if you like, on the working and middle classes, and we've done it again to them. Yeah. This time with consumer prices. Then it was asset prices, now it's consumer prices. It's more noticeable with consumer prices because you need to be able to afford your loaf of bread if you're to survive.
Yeah, and then we send them off to war to die when in our stead.
It's awful. We've really got to get a grip of this problem.
Yeah, we do. I agree. We should put together a charter of what we want this country to look like, and make sure that people write to their Tory MPs and say, "We'll vote for you if you stand by this." That's what it should happen.
Yeah.
But they're never going to do it, are they? They're too hooked in. It's like they can't get it. It's like he's in the spider web, and every time he moves, it gets something else tangled.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God.
Mother, I'm going to bring my mother up very briefly if I've got time.
Yeah.
My mother has voted Tory. She campaigned. She's voted Tory all her life. She campaigned with her father when he was a Tory councillor, when she was 12 years old. I will sit with my mum and I'll tell her everything I've said to you, and she will still remain a member of the Tory party. She will still remain a member of her Tory association, and she will say, "Well, Ben, I can't leave the Tory party." And that's the challenge.
It is the amoeba party. You can't get out. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Ben, you're a legend. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Lots of love.
Good to see you.
See you later. Happy Sunday, everyone.